All right, going to combine this into, probably I'm just going to say that we're probably going to go about 15 minutes here as we enter into late Tuesday night and kind of entering into territory that is like Wednesday, September 4th edition. So I'm going to mention there are so many storylines really from week one, but again, we highlighted on the channel Oregon struggles. Talked about Cade Klubnik and Dabo Swinney, the inability to win. How far away is Clemson? That's one of the takeaways. And then Penn State and Drew Aller, Wallace III, and them kind of finding something with Andy Kotelnicki, and then the defensive consistency even under a new coordinator. But now let's talk about some of the quarterbacks that have kind of blown it out of the water in terms of their success. And Cam Ward, like what you were hearing this offseason about Cam Ward was that he was an absolute stud and a baller. What he did at Florida was one of the great performances in week one history. I mean, it's up there, and this is going to get some eye rolls, but you remember some week ones of greatness, and I remember this game in particular, week one. I certainly remember last year Jordan Travis, but that's not going to be my example of quarterback being brilliant in week one. I'm going to go with Kenny Hill against Texas A&M. Now, I think that, or Kenny Hill at South Carolina the year after Manziel. And Kenny Hill lit that thing on fire. And you're thinking, Kevin Sumlin. What I was thinking was Kevin Sumlin, A&M. It's a snap your fingers. Manziel was really good. Kenny Hill's going to be the next one. I don't know if he's going to be as good as Johnny. And then it ends up that he flames out at A&M. And Sumlin eventually flames out. Jameis Winston against Pittsburgh, I believe his freshman year was unbelievable. Okay. Jameis Winston against Pittsburgh on Labor Day. Special stuff. What Cam Ward did in Miami week one, what a performance. I mean, this guy just has the confidence and the swagger. I mean, he goes at Shedeur Sanders in quarterback videos. You see that swagger and confidence. Like, we're going up there. We have all the pieces we need. We're going to win this game by a lot. And sometimes guys back up that, that kind of bravado and that confidence. And sometimes guys cannot do that. Cam Ward just delivered. And he even said after the game, like, the swamp's not even that loud. So the guy just kind of is that chip on the shoulder, very similar career path to Jimmy Butler. Now it's different sports, but Jimmy Butler was from a city that's close to Tomball is East Shore, I believe, where Cam Ward is from. Both of the guys aren't recruited at all out of high school. Cam Ward has to play at Incarnate Word College. Jimmy Butler plays at a junior college. Then they have a connection. They go up a level. Jimmy to Marquette, Cam Ward to Washington State. They've had to make it pretty much. They're East Texas they're Texas guys, Houston, Texas natives, we'll say. And they've had to make it the hard way. And his story is unbelievable. I remember watching Cam Ward film and thinking, this guy is ridiculous here at, Incarnate Word. And then what a hire by Washington State. They get Eric Morris, the offensive coordinator, and then Cam Ward goes there. And we cover that on the show. Cam Ward ends up being a baller at Washington State, ends up beating Wisconsin both years. Then is he going to go to the draft and be like kind of a, fourth round pick maybe in the draft, in the Spencer Rattler, Michael Pratt kind of, because again, at Washington State, they didn't win at the highest level, but then This is it. This is kind of that year. This is that surge. You know, you look at Joe Burrow, junior year is an all right quarterback. Jaden Daniels, junior year, he's fine. Senior year, bam. You're talking about Heisman. You're talking about greatness. And that's Cam Ward. Confidence. Everybody there, like, he has control. He's in a big market in Miami, and he is in total control of that football team. And he goes in there and he's like, it's not even loud in the swamp. You know, you guys aren't even interrupting me post-snap. I've played at USC. It's louder. Like, he is just, because nothing could faze him. Like, he's been ignored his whole life. He's been ignored his whole football life. Like, now he's playing at this level. He's like, the adversity that I've had, like, nothing is really going to faze me right now. Like, now it's all downhill. I've had to climb this whole mountain uphill. Going to the swamp, it's a blessing to play in the ACC. I've had everybody doubt me. I've won, and I've gotten to this point. Like, now it's all downhill from here. And that is somebody that's somebody you want to bet on. You know, that's somebody that is going to be a quarterback that is going to be damn good. One of the great stories right now that we have in college football, you know. And a quarterback that I think, knock on wood, if he stays healthy, I think that now it's in vogue. I said he would be a Heisman guy, said that Miami would win. He was named preseason ACC Player of the Year. People scoffed at that. New York Giants, if they draft Cam Ward changes everything. Just like Joe Burrow changed Cincinnati, just like Josh Allen changed Buffalo, just like Cam Newton changed Auburn, just like Jameis Winston changed Jimbo Fisher's career. The quarterback changes everything and elevates teams. And now let's talk about the quarterback in Lincoln, Nebraska. Highest rated quarterback that I maybe ever watched out of high school, Dylan Raiola. Guy who can throw the ball 60, 70 yards flat-footed, has all the arm elasticity, was so calm and poised. Incredible. I mean, if it was 2nd and 15 with Heinrich Harburg or Adrian Martinez, you might as well bring out the punting unit. But it's 2nd and 15 and Dylan Raiola. Like, this is what I loved when Kyler Murray played at Oklahoma. Like, when they rushed 3 guys, the patience in the pocket, the patience to not leave the pocket. You watch guys like Cade Klubnik that are in their junior year leave the pocket early. He stays in that pocket. Stays, feels the rush, feels things, feels pressures. And that is something that is very hard probably to teach in a quarterback. You're going to try to teach it. Hate that whole, it's innate, you know, kind of thing, because you want to be able to learn everything in your life. But Dylan Raiola, now you're seeing receivers like Ja'Cory Barney, and you're seeing guys like Isaiah Nayor and Jamal Banks. You're seeing these type of players, like, now these wide receivers are popping at Nebraska. It's like, oh my God. Just learned how to play football in the modern age with invention of the forward pass. And Nebraska's never had an elite quarterback. Now you look at Nebraska, like we now live in a time period where if Nebraska played Clemson, Nebraska would have a chance to beat Clemson. That's how unbelievable this is. Like, if Nebraska played Florida State this year, Nebraska would have a chance to beat Florida State this year. Like, Nebraska's, like, doing it. Like, what program is better now, Nebraska or Florida? Like, this sport is still a little bit cyclical. Now, is Nebraska to the point where Nebraska's totally back where they're going to compete for a national championship? They're not there. But is it possible that Nebraska could ever be a 10-win team in the Big Ten Conference? Could they ever do that? And with Dylan Raiola, it's possible because he's that good of a quarterback. And for all of the people out there that says Nebraska's in the middle of their country and their fans are full of absolute crap and their fans expecting them to be a relevant team again, Fighting for playoffs, fighting for Big Ten championships is stupid because the game's passed you by and now you have television and you were doing roids in the 90s and you're in Lincoln, Nebraska. You're in the middle of the country. And again, you're not the only show in town anymore and your recruiting base sucks. Those people need to apologize to Nebraska when, knock on wood, for Dylan Raiola's health. I think Dylan Raiola is going to bring this program. I think he could literally be somebody that you look back on like a Jameis Winston or Deshaun Watson or a Cam Newton was to Auburn. Like one of these quarterbacks, one of these players. When you hit on a quarterback and the quarterback's that special, the whole team then galvanizes. Like now the defense is like, okay, whew. Imagine Dylan Raiola on that 2022 Nebraska team where their defense would literally hold teams to 16 points. That team can go from a 3-9 team to an 8-win team. Martinez was fine. He wasn't the worst quarterback in the world. Now the weapons, I got to give Matt Rhule credit. You got to give young Garrett a lot of credit. Garrett McGuire. A little bit of development here from Garrett McGuire, a 25-year-old kid. 25-year-old young man that's out there coaching the wide receivers at Nebraska. And now I have confidence because if you're going into a game with Jeff Sims, Chubba Purdy, or even an Adrian Martinez against Colorado, I don't think you're winning. But in one game, Dylan Raiola didn't throw an interception either as a senior. So this whole gunslinger, he's going to make the wow throws and he's going to be a Brett Favrean and take tons of risk. No, he's risk averse in the best way. He knows when it's time to up the risk and he knows the pulse of the game. He's an offensive lineman's kid. So he's offensive line. He knows the offensive lineman protections. Seems like a savant, seems like a genius. Changing the play 3 times. I mean, that felt weird. I'm not old enough for in the 90s when Nebraska was good. So seeing Nebraska score 40 points, it felt bizarre to me. It felt bizarre like seeing the Cubs win a World Series. It felt bizarre like seeing the Detroit Lions win these playoff games this past year. Seeing the Bengals and the Buffalo Bills be pretty good. It felt strange to me, like futuristic, a little creepy. Like, oh my gosh, what world am I living in where Matt Rhule, where Marcus Satterfield's somehow great? It's like he changed everything. It went from a cloudy day to a sunny day at Memorial Stadium. All we need is the balloons to come back. I still want those balloons after touchdowns. Oh my gosh. What a debut, what a start. Dylan Raiola. Dream big, Husker fans, because I think things in the future can literally happen that a lot of pundits will not apologize for. And they need to apologize. When they get something wrong, when they say something outward like Nebraska can never do something, and Nebraska starts competing for Big Ten championships and is actually maybe a top 10 program again, you guys know that they won't apologize. They're probably told by their producers not to apologize, but you guys know who those reporters are, and you don't need to spam them with incredible negativity. But in your mind, just have a little smirk on their face that's been like, you've been trashing us, and now look. Last part of this segment, Florida football. Florida. What is wrong with Billy Napier? I think he calls good plays. I think when you look at Pearsall, when you look at how Graham Mertz grew, defense is horrible. Defensive line, he's failed so badly that even Todd Grantham and Dan Mullen had better defense. The defense is terrible, and I'm the biggest Austin Armstrong fan. What he did at Southern Miss, he is a class guy. His journey into football is awesome. He's one of the toughest people that I know that coaches football. Just from his time at Southern Miss, it almost makes me emotional how great Austin was with that football team. And he still has a promising career, but then he went to Florida, and I was so excited for Austin Armstrong. I'm like, I like Billy Napier. Billy Napier's okay. Like, his personality might seem like a tiny bit bland. But then I'm thinking, okay, Austin Armstrong is here. And ever since Austin left Southern Miss, oh my gosh, miss Austin so much in Hattiesburg, because the nasty bunch, that defense, Southern Miss and Will Hall, like, that was the one year where they were really good and went to a bowl game, was when Austin was there. And so he's a young coach on the rise, and he's from the Ron Roberts tree, and he has great enthusiasm, and I'm like, I can't get enough. And then they have Ron Roberts come from Auburn. So it's like, okay, the godfather of the simulated pressures is now with the protege in Austin Armstrong. You know, Cam Ward's a talented quarterback, but now Florida, they got some, transfer portals, and now it's year 3 of Napier, and some of these guys are going to grow up. And that D-line did nothing. And Florida's a place that's known for really good defensive line play and really good linebacker play. And it's startling. They were terrible. And I don't see any improvement. And that's a shame, because it's just flat out, you got to call it how it is. Austin Armstrong, Ron Roberts, they're not getting the job done. Billy Napier might have needed to hire somebody outside of his friend group, which is very unfortunate. He maybe needed a philosophy change on the defensive side of the ball. The defense is atrocious. Special teams has been terrible. And then you look at the offense, they have an inability of running the ball, so they are one-dimensional. And then Graham Mertz, who only throws for 120 yards when Graham Mertz is 23 years old and has played really good football. And then Napier wins the battle for DJ Lagway. So eventually they're going to go to Lagway, and he might ball out. Maybe against A&M you start Lagway, but is that defense ever going to get there? They have one opportunity to salvage this thing, and it's against a quarterback in Connor Weigman that can't hit the broadside of a barn. Sorry, that's if you watch that Notre Dame game, he has that passing game is not very good. That's putting it as nicely as I can say. So that game in Gainesville in a couple of weeks. But the problem is, Ken, the Florida secondary isn't Notre Dame's either. So, Billy, you were good at Louisiana, but you're not motivating players that well. You're not getting the best out of them. You never were a rah-rah speaker guy, but you hired all these guys that I like. And I like the scheme, and I like the brains, and I like the coaching staff a lot. I needed to look more into the recruiting and see, okay, they don't have the girth on both sides of the ball. And that's I guess, next level analysis that I have to put in. But it's weird. Even Alabama's 5 stars are not even the ones that are out there making plays that I evaluated very highly. So it's possible to still miss. Obviously. And it's been a struggle. I think maybe Billy, kind of like Frost, there's not one way that a coach kind of fails, but it's a program that expects a lot, so it's a lot of pressure. And then if you hire people that are just like your buddies, a lot of times maybe your ideas become insulated somehow, and I guess that's how it fails. But I guess even successful coaches are hiring people that are really close to them, like Kirby Smartness, Will Muschamp, and who's the offensive coordinator there? That was the that was the quarterback at college. That was the quarterback who was the it was the coach of Colorado State. There is the offense. Mike Bobo. Oh, Kirby doesn't hire his friends. That's the whole staff is Glenn Schumann and those guys, and they're great. So maybe everybody's hiring friends in their staffs, But it's not working for Florida. I guess it's not motivating the players. It's missing on defense in every regard, missing on defense, and not being that rah-rah motivator losing recruiting battles with the defensive line, not getting your running, not being a physical enough football team is the problem. And then you're also like you're at a place where you're expected to win, right? Where you have resources to win. And Dan Mullen, like, you're going into an era that's not made for you to be that successful. Like, you're coming from the Sun Belt. Like, sometimes your charisma, like, it is important to win press conferences a little bit because then, you know, the fans will say, I like that guy. I like that guy. I'm rooting really hard for that guy. And then maybe that charisma too, or just like trying to show your personality, a little fire to the average fan. And guess who's an average fan? It's your athletic director. It's the decision makers. It could be recruits watching. Personality does mean a lot in college football coaching. It just does. And, but winning, I get, yeah. And it's just tough. I mean, because Dan Mullen, like, he coached in an easier time when it was just the SEC East. Now you're going to a bigger SEC. So many problems. The schedule has hit you at the hardest time. You ran into a buzzsaw, maybe the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. Like, it's just all negative momentum, all negative. And you couldn't get that positive bump. And Eli Drinkowitz, like, you ride that positive wave, bam, it buys you time. You know, PJ Fleck in year 3, they went 11-2. They went 10-2 as a football team. You know, they beat Auburn in the New Year's 6. And Florida's tough. And then Florida in the SEC East, like, Dan Mullen had good offenses. You know, Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, like, they recruited well. And guess what? They beat Georgia, I believe, with Dan Mullen. And they got to they beat Georgia, and they got to Atlanta a couple times with Dan Mullen. All right. And now you're going against the elitist of Georgia. You're going against Prime Kirby, and now and now divisions are gone. So the SEC East, which was South Carolina, which was the landscape has changed around you. Like, Kentucky's getting better, and Tennessee's turning into a juggernaut, where Tennessee was down when McElwain, when Muschamp, and Mullen were there. Tennessee was very down. Missouri was down. That East was very attainable, so you get a trip to Atlanta, which is a big deal, and you beat your rivals. You beat Tennessee. Like, Mullen would beat Tennessee. Mullen would beat Georgia. Mullen would beat South Carolina and Kentucky. And then with McElwain, or now with Napier, you're running into problems because the landscape has changed around you. Your rivals have gotten better at the wrong time. The sport with NIL and the in conference expansion has hurt you. There are so many things that are hurting Florida. I know that there are excuses, but there are also relevant reasons why it's not working and why it didn't work.